We're coming in hot to give you our hot takes on all the latest mental health news.
From headlines and memes to developments and breakthroughs.
We go into this show blind with the hopes of learning something new.
Before sharing some bunny hugs.
And leaving with our eyes wide open. I'm Nick.
And I'm Todd. And this is Mental Health Headline Hot Takes.
We're glad you're here. Hey.
Did you have a good week?
I had a week, but I feel like that's usually the case. No, I'm just kidding. There's some good stuff this week. How about you?
It's getting there. Although the wife's been very sick and the kid's been sick. So, that affects me as well, even though it doesn't affect me physically. But yeah. There's a vibe in the house a little bit, but everyone's getting better. It's getting better.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Well, anyway, we had some really good fake banter there. So now I'll go right into it. I'll go into my headline here. The story headline is Youth Still Suffering from Mental Health Impact of COVID. And the source is Sharon Burns from this is weird. Thoroldtoday.ca. I don't know if I said that right.
Whatever. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's their fault for not making it more obvious.
I did see that headline too. It's unfortunate and not surprising, but
except mental health is that's a Canadian article actually. But anyway, I'll give a few quotes from the articles here. So short-term impacts of lockdowns and school closures during the 3 years of the pandemic show that youth in particular have been and may still be suffering from mental health issues, said Dr. Amanda Sherman. She was talking to somebody there. Screen time went up 50% during pandemic and hasn't come back down.
Jeez. And
as a father of a 19 and a 17-year-old, I can say that's true. But also, I mean, they were also on the screens more because that's how they were doing their schooling. So,
and people like working in, non-manual labor jobs were now doing all their meetings over Zoom.
Exactly. Yeah. Youth decreased their physical activity by 20%. There was a disruption in routines to sleep, nutrition, and the idea of coping with uncertainty, which I think it was everybody, not just youth, but also intimate partner violence went up, which of course then impacts
in the youth?
Children.
Or just in general?
just in general, but that's mom and dad are now scrapping all the time.
Right.
So that affects the children. I luckily not in our house. Well, I'll let my lawyer talk on that. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm going to cut that out because that was weird. Anyway, another impact of COVID on youth resulted in increased rates of hospital emergency department visits and hospitalizations for self-harm. Sherman noted that hospital visits from female youth were higher than visits from youth. Not saying that males weren't also impacted, but I beg to say that it probably was just as impactful on boys. It's just boys
are less likely to report or answer.
Exactly. Yeah. So what I'll just briefly say that it was actually eating disorders were the number one thing that went up, and it was almost all girls. And
I mean, think about this. What were they doing? They were on TikTok, right? What are you watching on TikTok? Fitness, dancing, all of that stuff. That's just going to make you look inward, unfortunately, and
exactly
say, hey, why don't I look like that? Why don't I move like that? Why am I not funny like that? All these things are just kind of probably impacting your mind.
And they're on their screens more. So yeah, of course that stuff's going to affect them. But not just the numbers went up, but actually the severity of the disease of eating disorders went up. So, so people are coming in, even like first time diagnosis. People usually it's not that severe. They get diagnosed early, but she was saying that the severity was actually quite high. They were already really sick physically too, which is kind of scary. But again, I beg that boys were also affected, but there was maybe drinking or anger or I don't know. They just let it out differently, whereas I think the girls were, for whatever reason, they go to eating disorders. But One challenge that they're still having is trying to get kids back into school. And I can say this with my 17-year-old. We are also kind of having trouble. But also we don't, I shouldn't say trouble, because we just let him stay home. If he's not feeling good mentally or physically, we're like, stay home. Like, you're home for 3 years. Like, what's another couple of days?
Well, also think about, 17. So he was what, 14, 15 when all this started. Mm-hmm. I can't believe it's been 3 years.
Yeah.
What the heck? No, 4 years. Has it been 4 years now?
Well, it was
2020 to,
it was like the
2021,
spring of 2019.
2020. It was like February, March of 2020.
Oh, right, 2020.
Yeah, because right. I remember because my friends and I, so in Chicago, going out on St. Patrick's Day is like what you do. Like, you start drinking at like 5 a.m. if you get up. We dive the River Green, all this stuff. It's a really big holiday. And I remember my friends and I were getting together, and there was just all the rumblings of everything starting to shut down. And we were just like, whatever. And then we were out, and it was like significantly less crowded than it usually was. And we're like, are we doing something wrong? Should we not be doing this? But anyway, it's been almost 4 years now. And I can't imagine what it would be like to be a teenager where you're in your prime of like socializing and like really learning how you're going to show up in the world, which I would argue goes on forever. But it's such an influential time in their lives. Like, I can't even imagine what that would be like for a teen.
Yeah. Well, so it's affected both my kids differently. My younger one, he's a very social guy. He's got a real tight group of friends. We live in a small town, so it wasn't a big deal if they went out and went for walks and hung out. My older one, it was literally grade 10, 11, and 12 was shut down. And so he missed out on everything that's fun about high school. He's like my wife, has social anxiety. And the last 2 years have been rough on him because he went to university with basically no social skills. Right. Even his friends that he has a hard time asking them to go and meet. Oh. But he's okay like playing online with them.
Yeah.
No, yeah, well, I know.
But why is he okay playing online? Because that's how he interacted with them for 4 years.
Exactly. So he's having trouble. Hopefully he doesn't hear this and give me shit. But yeah, so I've seen it firsthand that, I mean, of course it's gonna, I mean, I saw the headline. I was like, well, yeah, of course, I'm sure people are going to be affected for a long, long time. But there's one more point here she makes. Sherman hears from educators that many students are having a hard time self-regulating their behavior. And I bet you that's more boys than girls. So again, I was saying like they act out differently than maybe eating disorders, but that's just my theory. I don't actually know that, but yeah, that's
I'm not surprised.
That's my article.
I'm not really surprised by the acting out. I mean, if you think about like the big picture of it all, right? Where we were, no matter how old you were, you had some autonomy, right? You know, a young kid isn't going to be able to dictate everything that they do and all of that, but you had some autonomy to like go outside, to eat lunch with your friends at the cafeteria every day, whatever that is. That's like all taken away. And then you're put into this, you know, it's like a pressure cooker, right? You're put into your house. You're not allowed to leave. You're only allowed to socialize in groups of whatever it was, 6, social distancing, depends. All that. Yeah. Like you're conditioning people to not know how to socialize, to not regulate in real life. Because that's the thing. Like you can learn, it's like therapy, right? 90% of the work is done outside of therapy, right? I think that's what most therapists, you know, would say, something around that. Same thing with social skills, right? Like you can sit here and be like, I'm not going to get angry. But if you don't practice not getting angry when something makes you angry in real life, and you're younger and you're still trying to figure out your regulatory system, and you're trying to manage your hormone going all crazy, it's totally different beast. Yeah.
And then you go back to school in the fall and everything's open again. And so now you're supposed to be back to, you know,
like it never happened. Yeah. That's what I think is the big thing for me with COVID is I'm like, there's some things that have forever changed. And I think we just didn't notice it. But then there's the things that like we act like it didn't happen. Like how is a kid supposed to just go back to school and act like it didn't happen when they're that young. It's like it's ignoring your trauma. It's suppressing your trauma, because I think as a global humanity species, we were all traumatized in one way or another by this, and we're not, as a society, collectively dealing with it.
100%. Yeah. I forgot one point that she also made in the article was kids that experienced depression and anxiety before the pandemic experienced worse during the pandemic, and a lot of kids that didn't experience then experienced it. Yeah. So I mean, this is a morbid positive spin on it, but in some ways, for someone who's been struggling with depression and anxiety all his life, it's kind of nice in a way that people that may have never experienced it before have had a bit of a taste. Mm-hmm. So now it's like it is mental health is more a forefront issue that people are talking about now. So in a way, it's like, at least that happened, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, and I know you don't want to wish that on anybody, but it's like, no. It is kind of more widely and openly talked about, I think, especially with people our age and younger.
Right. Yeah. And better understood because they've had just a little taste of it even. Yeah.
I want to ask you one question on that. What do you think is the solution for kids that are suffering from post-traumatic COVID? I'm like, how do I say that? Like post-traumatic COVID symptoms.
I have no idea. That's the thing. I have no idea. It's like, I don't know if peer support or if it's just, now in our DNA now.
Well, I mean, we could do a whole episode probably on that, if not a marathon. I think the interesting thing is that kids are learning these behaviors, and we grew up half with the internet, half without, right? Half with smartphones, half without. These kids are growing up with smartphones in their hands before they can talk, or iPads or electronics, whatever, right? And then these apps like TikTok, especially TikTok, have algorithms to specifically get you addicted. So, for example, with TikTok, when you pick up your phone and you go on TikTok, and I have a TikTok, I post and ghost. I never scroll because I know that when you open TikTok, it's the only app that instantly starts feeding you content without any action from you. And then it's just like you swipe endlessly and it's all instant. And I don't know it's the dopamine hits. It really is.
I'm saying me, I'll spend, that's how I go to bed, is swiping and swiping.
That's the worst thing you could do.
To the point is like, it's been 2 hours.
Oh my gosh. I hope you wear blue light glasses or something if you're doing that. But I'm guilty of doing it more on Instagram because I you know what I get in my reels? I get like political stuff, like jokes and memes and videos, which I just love them because I think our whole political system's a circus clown show. And so I'm just like laughing my ass off scrolling through like Joe Biden falling, Trump saying something insane. It's just like, it's funny. But yeah, I mean, the algorithms are so addictive that they don't even stand a chance. And it's almost like, even if you think about, I'm just not going to go on it. Well, you are suffering from depression and anxiety, or whatever your challenge is as a young person, and then you don't want to do anything anyway. So what is there to do? Scroll, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just, it's really, I don't want to end the part on such a somber note, but I don't know what the solution is either. And I think it's almost like more
apps.
Right. There's the solution. How about an app that trains you to have better mental health self-care practices? I think we have those.
I'm sure they're out there.
They are. Yeah, they are. But yeah, I know. Yeah. I had
but they're not addicting.
Right. I had a neuroscientist on an episode of my podcast back in the spring, and he was telling me that there was a new
podcast.
I do. It's called Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson. You were a guest. I felt like what he had said was kids from a new study were spending 16 hours a day on TikTok. Okay. So I know.
That's all waking hours.
I know. I don't know. Like, it's crazy. Maybe we should drop the link to that in the show notes. But that episode, like, opened my eyes, and he talks, and he's a great follow on Instagram for mental health. His name's TJ Power. He does practical advice on there to deal with some of the like social media, even porn and stuff like that, like ways to like wean yourself off of this addiction. So I think like raising awareness and education of that. But when you look at the headlines and you look at the news, they never give any solutions. I saw in the news the other day, and I don't watch the news, but I put the TV on when I leave the dog. And sometimes if I'm just cooking or something, I'll just leave it on because I'm not really paying attention. But there was a whole news story about the damages TikTok's having on the mental health of teenagers. And I was sitting there and I'm like, where are the solutions? They're just talking about the problem. Where are the solutions? And they never talk about the solutions.
It's true. Even in this article about COVID and stuff, there was no solutions. It was just like, hey, everyone's sad and people are still sad.
Yeah. So
bye. I'll talk next week again to some other school. It's like,
seriously.
Okay, thanks for the hope.
Seriously.
But I don't know. Maybe it is just part of our evolution now was COVID and screens as a species.
I don't know if that's a good thing, but here we are. So I think I'll throw a solution out there. If you're listening to this, take a tech-free walk. I do that. I don't have my tech with me. I just go for a walk with the dog. Another thing I try to do is I put my phone face down. I have times where I go on do not disturb because I don't have my Instagram notifications on. And these things, they help because they kind of put it on my time. So if I have something that I want to do, if I have deep work I need to get done, or I need to write something, I can't be distracted with my phone, with notifications, with Instagram, with TikTok. So take advantage of the little things that you do have control of. Move your body, put your phone on do not disturb, put your Instagram, TikTok notifications off, and just start doing these things that are so addictive and mindless and mind numbing. Do them on your terms, not on the terms of the moment you get an alert. Right. So I think that's not to say you're not going to sit there and scroll for 2 hours sometimes, but it's not like proactively grabbing your attention, right? You're proactively choosing when you use it. That's from a non-scientist, pretty stupid around the science of it.
Well, I kind of needed that talking to be honest with you, because
I actually was directing that at you. I just didn't want to say it. I'm kidding.
Yeah. Well, no, I did need to hear that because but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great things. Well, it's okay. We've kind of gone from COVID to social media now, but there are some things that are really great for, I'm grateful for social media, but
it's weird. There are benefits to it. Like I've connected with people I never would have connected with otherwise. But I do think that, right, exactly. I do think that it's one of those things that can also become just too much and too overbearing. And it is like, these kids, young people are seeing, and it's like I talk about this with one of my friends, the influencers and stuff. And they're not even getting like a real inside look into what people's lives are like. Instead, it's just these people that are on a pedestal taking these glamorous photos, doing these glamorous events, glamorizing, everything, and never really having the struggles that, some of these people have, or that they didn't even grow up with because social media wasn't what it is now. So anyway, I wish young people, I hope that we find a way to give them a better, like, real life social experience.
Yeah. I wasn't prepared for social media. I was ready to talk about COVID. You're right.
TikTok exploded during COVID. I mean, it was around, but it like exploded during COVID. So anyway, maybe mine's sad. My story for today is sad, but I also think that there's some positive note on it. It's Rosalynn Carter has passed away. That's the former first lady and the wife of President Jimmy Carter. And the article I have today is Rosalynn Carter's advocacy for mental health was rooted in compassion and perseverance by Holly Raymer at the Associated Press. So, a couple points on this. Rosalynn was a powerhouse, I guess is what I'm going to use, on reducing the stigma on mental health and mental illness very, very early on. Kind of a pioneer in this space. Like, we used to think that we as a society used to think that mental illness and mental health were, first of all, interchangeable. And then second of all, I mean, let's sum it up quickly. Like, we used to do lobotomies to people. And for those of you who don't know what a lobotomy is, that's because it's an archaic practice of literally like piercing someone's brain to calm them down and make them basically catatonic. So if someone suffered from, even like a manic episode, if someone was bipolar, if someone had extreme anxiety or was overreactive, like, we would literally pierce their brain with a giant poker to just stop them. So to think that, now that was before Carter's time, but the stigma was still, if someone was mentally ill, we would put them in a psychiatric hospital. We didn't have the rehabilitation clinics that we have now. We didn't have, the mental health services available, not everywhere, but available in the way that they are now. We didn't have, government funding into these services, at least here in the United States. And so when Rosalynn started advocating for mental health during Carter's presidential campaign, she was able to really like listen to people and see the struggles people were having, and it turned her into this advocate to the point where she had like a mental health task force that she developed, and helped with use that to help move policy into mental health space and mental health care, which was really helpful for people that were suffering. And even I believe this was post Carter's presidency, she founded the Rosalynn Carter Institute for Mental Health. Let me say that again. She founded the Rosalynn Carter Institute for Mental Health to provide education and training to mental health professionals so that they could actually help people. And I think, here in Chicago, specifically, this rings with me because we have a new mayor, Brandon Johnson. I worked on his campaign and his whole approach. So we had a very contentious battle. We had a sort of pro-cop, really a conservative side of things running as a Democrat, and then we had another guy who ended up winning. And his whole thing was, we need to treat the cause, not throw people in jail, and has a program called Treatment Not Trauma. And its purpose is to provide more mental health services publicly funded in areas that have had them shut down over the last couple decades. And I think about like those types of programs and the way people are talking about it, and we would have not had that without Rosalynn Carter. She was a true pioneer in raising awareness, normalizing, and removing the stigma of mental health. Are you familiar with her?
Mostly just within the last few days because since her death. But yeah. I'm actually more familiar with the president afterwards, Reagan, and him shutting down a lot of these places where there was, because there was a lot of abuse and overpopulation, or was overcapacitated, but also they didn't replace them with anything other than more jails.
I would have to look this up, but I believe Chicago closed 12 of 15 facilities over.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm gonna, if you don't mind, give me a second. I'm gonna look that up because I don't want to misspeak on that. Oh, I was right. Almost right. Oh. So yeah, Mayor Rahm Emanuel here in Chicago closed 6 of the 12 mental health clinics in the city as part of a massive budget cut. So it's like, that's half, right? And so now we're trying to get those open back up. I know that there's some big investments that just started going into mental health, but all of this wouldn't have happened without Rosalynn Carter, because she started the programming, pushing the policies to treat this. She also pushed policies to make insurance companies cover mental health services, because they never used to cover them. And there's still a lot of work that could be done there.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I've had trouble with life insurance because I had a suicide attempt 10 years ago. And so, yeah, it's still tough, but yeah,
so
that's
they won't
amazing.
give you life insurance?
They might now. I haven't applied for a while, but
what a
it was
discrimination.
a couple of years after. Well, I know.
It is, though.
I know. I was like, to be honest with you, it did not help my mental health hearing that.
I bet. Well, you have a family.
Oh, yeah. And like, we had just moved houses. So it was like, we had to renew our mortgage and stuff. And they're like, well, it was actually the bank. Whoever does the insurance for the bank would not give me the life insurance for my mortgage. Even though my old house did, but, so anyway, yeah. I was like, oh, great. So I'm a burden. I'm not worth being insured.
This is, I'll say arguing, but having a friendly debate with a friend of mine earlier today about just politics in general in the US. And I had this thought this morning while I was walking the dog, and I'm like, we in this world do not give people food, water, clothing, and housing, which we're taught are the basic human needs from the earliest age in school, unless they have money. Like, you literally can't survive without money. And you could say, oh, well, homeless people, and they don't make money and they somehow survive. Like, whatever stupid argument you want to come up with, they're still relying on money from something somewhere to keep them alive. And what state of the world is that? Like, you will die of one of a million things probably if you just don't have any money.
Maybe in their obituaries should say died of capitalism.
I think we all die of capitalism. But yeah.
But it's funny, some of the poorest countries are the happiest countries. But they're also providing their own food, and they're living with 3 generations, and it's like there's human connection. There are no screens, so it is like,
well, I think
the simpler
too,
the better, maybe.
Yeah, like when I worked for a Swedish company during COVID, and in Sweden they never shut down. They continued on, but travel was right. So there were different things. There were recommendations, but they never shut down the way we did. They're also one of the happiest countries in the world, but the Nordics, they're the happiest countries in the world. And that's because they have such strong social programs and work-life balance and all these things that people don't have to worry about losing their health care if they lose their job like we do here. People don't have to worry about losing their job because there's a social safety net that's there to make them. And I remember, like, we had to lay someone off in Sweden, and I was just starting at the company, and I was like, oh my God, like, are we giving her as a manager, I always want to make sure I've given everyone an opportunity to succeed before making a decision like that. And I was thinking the same thing for him. Like, have we set her up for success? If we need some different role, like, we have an obligation to find her something within our company, or, support her until she does find something, with a severance package or something. And I remember my coworker was like, Nick, in Sweden, you don't have to worry about losing your job. Like, you're not going to be homeless. We have like less than 1% homelessness, and most of it's immigrants. And that to me was just such a like eye-opening thing, because when you have these basic human needs met at like a social security level, you don't have to like be at the behest of capitalism or die. You know what I mean? And that, to me, like, that's the kind of thing that we need from our leaders and people like Rosalynn Carter and people like our mayor here, which, there's things he's doing that I kind of roll my eyes at, things he's not doing that he promised and all that. But, we need people to make mental health a public service because everybody needs support at some point.
Yeah. And it's funny, people that, debate that, they say, oh, that's socialism. Well, it isn't.
People don't know what
actually,
socialism is.
No, it's actually a capitalist country still.
Yeah.
And I believe they call it from crib to coffin, you're taken care of. So if anything, whether it's mental health, so even when you're an old person, they take care of their old people, they take care of their, you're taken care of all through. And then people say, oh, well, their taxes are through the roof.
They're not that much higher.
Well, and if my taxes were going to that instead of the world's largest military, no offense, America. It's just,
no. Here's the reality of it. Maybe there'll be plenty of time to discuss that, but another time maybe. But that's the thing is so I hosted a couple campaign events for Bernie Sanders in 2020 at my house, and I brought a coworker from Sweden who was staying in the U.S. for a year because we needed her over here. And I brought her there to talk about how much money she pays in taxes and what that covers. And the reality of it is she pays 33% taxes. Okay. I pay 28. Do you know what else I pay? You know what else I pay?
No.
I pay $500 a month for my student loan that I'll be paying for the rest of my life. I pay, what am I paying? Whatever you pay for health insurance, right? Which if you don't have a job, you don't get, or you're paying $800 a month for out of pocket, plus co-pays, deductibles. Yeah. Okay. So the problem here, but like I say, I'm like, yeah, but I have a badass military that takes 57% of its tax dollars so that we can come and blow you up with the snap of a finger. So you better fall in line and shut up, because don't make me do that.
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so that's the thing though, is I feel like taxes in the US have a stigma because we don't get anything for them. Where when you pay taxes in these countries, you're getting services back from those tax dollars. And that's the difference, because they can look at it and say, okay, when she came to America, my coworker, she came to America, she was like, what's a deductible? What's co-insurance? Why am I paying this much? She's like, I'm sick. I don't even think I should go to the doctor. Those are the things Americans live with every single day that these other countries don't have to think about. And they're not paying that much more in taxes than us. And hey, guess what? Taxes aren't viewed as this horrific thing like they are here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get free healthcare. Sometimes it's not optimal healthcare,
but hey, don't you have to wait in these long bread type lines from the 1930s to see a doctor for a cold? Because that's what we're told here. Yeah.
No.
So anyway, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, we don't have the world's best cancer hospital either, like the States does, but, so, I mean, but everybody has their
But if you lived here, could you afford the world's greatest cancer?
No. Yeah, that's the other thing. That's right.
Right.
So, as a Canadian, anytime I travel to the States, I actually have to get travel insurance in case I do get sick. And it's quite often like $1 million insurance. And I remember thinking the first time I was like, $1 million? Why the hell would I need $1 million? And I had a friend say, my mom had a heart attack in the States and it cost her $3 million to get home. And she was insured, but if it was much more, her insurance wasn't going to cover it. So
there you have it.
I was like, holy shit.
Just don't mess with our military or our allies, because we'll fund them too. Was it Joe Biden said we have more than enough money to fund the Ukraine and Israel war? Like,
oh,
we do? Because I've got a lot of homeless people down the street from me that I think could really use a place to stay as it gets cold here in Chicago. It's just unbelievable. Anyway, Rosalynn Carter, a true pioneer in like destigmatizing mental health, and I thought it would be nice to talk about her accomplishments and I guess some of the positive influence she has. And I think our politicians, our first ladies, are hopefully someday first man. Would it be a first man? I don't even know. They could learn a lot from her and really advocate for people that struggle with their mental health.
Agreed. Well, we solved the world's problems.
Yep, we can be done, and this will be hopefully everyone will listen to it in the world leader space, and we'll be good to go. This has been our mental health headline hot takes.
We're so glad you came.
Remember, when you heal yourself,
you heal the world.
Be sure to like this video, leave comments, and suggest articles for future episodes.
Hit subscribe to Eyes Wide Open
and Bunny Hugs and Mental Health.